Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring a book, and it's called The Art of Being Alone. Solitude is my home, loneliness was my cage.
Oh, interesting title.
It is, yeah, by Renuka Gavrani.
Okay.
Now, being alone doesn't exactly have the best reputation, does it?
No, not really.
But what if we've been looking at it all wrong?
Mm.
This book really challenges us to reframe our entire perspective on solitude.
Yay.
And maybe, just maybe, discover some surprising benefits along the way.
That sounds pretty intriguing.
It is.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how Gavrani kicks things off with this really vivid story
Okay.
about a high school student who is constantly alone, like eating alone, sitting alone,
Oh, wow.
even going to the bathroom alone.
Oh, she doesn't sugarcoat it.
No, she does not.
Yeah.
It's a powerful image, right?
It
It makes you think back to those awkward high school days, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, who hasn't felt that pressure to fit in?
Right.
Even if it meant doing things that they weren't really into.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, and that's precisely what Gavrani argues, is that we're essentially conditioned from a young age to fear being alone.
Hmm.
It's as if, like, being alone automatically equals to being a weirdo or a loser.
Right.
And that fear can be really powerful.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Did you know that studies have shown that social pain, like the feeling of being excluded,
Yeah.
actually triggers similar brain responses to physical pain?
Wow.
Yeah,
That's pretty intense.
it is.
No wonder we try so hard to avoid being seen as that isolated person.
Right.
Which brings us to another fascinating point that Gavrani makes,
Okay.
the whole idea of romanticized loneliness.
Romanticized loneliness.
Yeah, have you ever seen those movies or books
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean.
where you have that lonely protagonist who is eventually rescued
Right.
by some amazing friend or soulmate?
Yeah.
And while it makes for a good story,
Yeah.
it can also set us up for some serious disappointment in real life.
Definitely, yeah.
I can definitely see that. I mean, who hasn't secretly hoped for a Chandler and Joey friendship?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Or some equally incredible connection to just fall into their lap.
Right.
But holding out for that perfect savior
Yeah.
can leave you feeling incomplete, like you're not enough on your own.
It's like we're being sold this idea that we need someone else to complete us.
Right.
And that can be a dangerous trap. In
Yeah.
fact, Gavrani talks about her own experiences with this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, how she spent years trying so hard to fit in that she lost sight of her own identity. Yeah.
She really puts herself out there, doesn't she?
She does.
It's refreshing to hear someone talk so honestly about that struggle.
Definitely.
I know I've definitely felt that pressure to adapt to different social circles, to
Yeah.
basically code switch
Right.
just to be accepted.
Yeah.
It can be incredibly draining to constantly feel like you're putting on a mask.
It's exhausting. And Gavrani argues that this constant adaptation to other people's expectations can lead to a real disconnect from our true selves.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do we bridge that gap? Well, this is where she introduces the concept of self-love,
Okay.
but not in the way you might expect.
Right. She's not talking about bubble baths and face masks.
Exactly.
Huh?
She actually takes a little bit of a jab at that whole commercialized surface-level idea of self-love.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, instead, she defines self-love as a two-part process.
Okay.
First, knowing yourself,
Right.
your strengths, weaknesses, values, all of it.
Yeah.
And second, accepting yourself, flaws and all.
I like that.
It's about getting real with who you are, not trying to fit into some pre-packaged mold.
Makes sense.
You know, I think we've all felt overwhelmed at some point by the sheer volume of self-love advice out there.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But Gavrani's approach feels much more grounded and realistic.
It's about self-acceptance, not self-improvement. And from there, she takes this fascinating turn by highlighting individuals who embraced solitude.
Oh, interesting.
People like Georgia O'Keeffe,
Okay.
Nikola Tesla,
Yeah.
Vincent van Gogh,
Wow, interesting group.
all incredibly successful in their fields and all known for their solitary natures.
That's what really caught my attention, too.
Yeah.
It's like she's saying, look, these highly creative, innovative individuals actually harness the power of solitude.
Yeah.
In fact, there's research suggesting that spending time alone can boost creativity.
Wow.
It's like stepping away from the constant noise and distractions allows us to tap into a deeper well of inspiration.
It makes you wonder if our modern obsession with constant connection is actually hindering our ability to be truly creative.
Right.
Think about it. In a world overflowing with information and stimulation,
Yeah.
the ability to focus becomes incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
Maybe true innovation comes from those who can disconnect and tap into that quiet space within.
I love that.
Yeah.
So it's not just about tolerating alone time.
No.
It's about actively harnessing it for personal growth. But how do we actually do that in a world that's constantly vying for our attention?
Right.
It's like we're bombarded with distractions 24/7.
Yeah, it's true.
Where do we even begin?
Well, Gavrani uses this really insightful analogy to explain it.
Okay.
She compares it to overeating.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Think about it. Just like our bodies need time to digest food,
Yeah.
our minds need time to process the constant influx of information we're bombarded with.
Hmm.
If we're constantly stuffing ourselves with information,
Yeah.
our minds, like our stomachs, need a break to digest and make sense of it all.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Like, we wouldn't expect our stomachs to handle a nonstop buffet of information, so why do we do that to our minds?
Exactly. It's about disconnecting from the external world to reconnect with our inner world.
Right.
Have you ever felt mentally stuffed from information overload?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Yeah, me too. How do you create that space to process it all?
I get that, but honestly, the thought of just sitting and being bored terrifies me. How is that even possible in today's world?
Yeah.
Isn't there always something we should be doing or watching or reading?
It's definitely a challenge, but that's where Gavrani introduces this almost radical concept, the art of getting bored.
The art of getting bored.
Yeah,
Okay, you're going to have to explain this one.
I will. It might sound counterintuitive, but think about it.
Yeah.
When was the last time you allowed yourself to truly be bored?
Mm.
No phone, no TV, no distractions.
Oh, wow.
Just you and your thoughts.
Honestly, it's been a while.
Yeah.
I'm almost always doing something, even if it's just scrolling through my phone.
Right.
The thought of just sitting and doing nothing feels uncomfortable.
It's a common feeling. We're so used to instant gratification and constant stimulation that boredom feels almost like a threat.
Yeah.
But what if, as Gavrani suggests, boredom is actually a catalyst for creativity and clarity?
I'm listening. Tell me more about this art of getting bored.
Well, she argues that a lot of our most innovative ideas come to us not when we're actively searching for them, but when our minds are allowed to wander.
Oh, okay.
It's like when you're trying to force an idea, it just doesn't come.
Yeah,
But when you let your mind relax and wander, that's when the magic happens.
I can see that.
Yeah,
It's like those times when you're in the shower
right.
or taking a walk and
Yeah.
suddenly a brilliant idea just pops into your head.
Exactly.
It's almost as if disconnecting from the constant noise allows our minds to make new connections.
That's right.
I think there's something to that.
Yeah, and she even suggests that learning to be comfortable with boredom can help us develop greater self-control and resilience. It's about training our minds to tolerate those moments of quiet without immediately reaching for a distraction.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal of this boredom thing.
Good.
But let's get practical. How do we make this shift from dreading alone time to actually embracing it?
Right.
Gavrani lays out a pretty interesting plan, doesn't she?
She does, and one of the first things she emphasizes is the importance of creating your own garden.
Oh, a garden.
A space filled with activities, hobbies, and interests that bring you joy,
Okay.
regardless of whether you're doing them with others or on your own.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So what does your personal garden look like?
Good question.
What are those activities that bring you genuine joy, regardless of who's around?
Well, for me, it's definitely reading.
Okay, yeah.
Getting lost in a good book
Mm.
is something I can do for hours,
Mm.
completely on my own.
Right.
And it doesn't even have to be something productive. You know?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just about allowing myself to do absolutely nothing. Just be.
Yeah, I think we all need to give ourselves permission to just be sometimes.
Think
You
so.
know, we're so programmed to be constantly doing,
Yeah.
achieving, consuming.
Right.
But sometimes the most fulfilling thing we can do is just allow ourselves to simply exist.
I completely agree. And that's a key part of what Gavrani is advocating for.
Right.
It's about finding that inner peace and contentment that doesn't rely on external validation or achievements.
This has given me a lot to think about already.
Me too.
How about we pause here for now and dive into the next part of Gavrani's plan in the next section of our deep dive. I'm really curious to see what other gems she has to offer.
Sounds good to me. So we talked about the importance of self-love and embracing boredom, but Gavrani doesn't stop there.
Right.
She challenges us to go even further
Okay.
by cultivating what she calls a garden
I'm garden.
of interests, hobbies, and fulfilling activities.
Okay.
Think of it as building a world of things you love to do.
Eh,
completely independent of anyone else's availability.
I love that analogy. It's like creating your own personal sanctuary, right? Filled
Right.
with things that bring you joy, regardless of whether you're alone or with others.
Exactly.
But it really shifts the focus, doesn't it?
It does.
Instead of waiting for someone else to entertain us or make us happy, we become the architects of our own fulfillment.
Yeah, I love that.
So empowering.
And this leads to another one of Gavrani's key points, the importance of lifelong learning.
Oh, this is where things get really exciting for me.
Okay.
I am a firm believer that learning should be a lifelong pursuit.
Absolutely.
Keeps us engaged, curious, and constantly growing.
I completely agree. And Gavrani shares this wonderful story about learning to crochet.
Oh, cool.
It wasn't something she ever thought she'd be interested in,
Right.
but she decided to give it a try.
Yeah.
And it ended up bringing her so much joy and a sense of accomplishment.
This reminds me of when I started taking solo hikes.
Oh, cool.
I used to think that hiking was only fun with friends.
Right.
But discovering the peace and beauty of nature on my own was like a revelation.
Wow.
It opened up a whole new world for me, and it was something I could enjoy completely independently.
That's great.
So what about you? What skills or knowledge have you always wanted to acquire?
Mm.
What's stopping you from pursuing them now?
That's a great question.
Mm,
And it's one that Gavrani encourages us to ask ourselves.
I like that.
It's so easy to get caught up in the daily grind and put our passions on the back burner,
Sure.
but there's a world of possibilities out there just waiting to be explored.
Absolutely. And think about how much richer our lives would be if we were constantly learning and expanding our horizons. It's like those skills and passions become part of our personal garden, adding depth and richness to our inner world.
Exactly. And it's not just about learning new skills.
Right.
It's about embracing new experiences,
Yeah.
trying new things, and constantly pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zones.
This reminds me of something Gavrani said about the danger of relying on others to fulfill our desires for fun and excitement.
Right.
She tells this story about fantasizing about these incredible college experiences that never materialized.
Oh, wow.
It's a great example of how putting our happiness in the hands of others can lead to disappointment.
It's true.
Yeah, we end up waiting for someone else to create those magical moments for us instead of taking the initiative to create them ourselves.
Yeah, we give away our power.
It's like we're giving away our power, isn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of being active participants in our own lives, we become passive observers, waiting for someone else to give us permission to have fun or be happy.
And that's why Gavrani stresses the importance of becoming independent, not in a solitary sense, but in a way that empowers us to create our own happiness.
Right.
It's about realizing that we have the power to choose joy, regardless of our relationship status or social circumstances.
That's a powerful message, isn't it? It's about reclaiming our own agency
I think so.
and becoming the authors of our own stories. And it's not just about grand adventures or bucket list experiences. It's about finding those little moments of joy in the everyday.
Yeah.
Even when we're alone.
Exactly. It could be something as simple as taking a walk in nature,
Yeah,
listening to your favorite music, or curling up with a good book.
right.
It's about finding those activities that nourish your soul and make you feel truly alive, regardless of who's around.
You know, she even mentions how much she enjoys taking evening walks through her hometown, even though it lacks the exciting features of larger cities.
Yeah. It's about finding beauty and contentment in the ordinary,
Yes.
in the moments we often take for granted.
And it's about challenging that societal narrative that tells us we need to be constantly entertained or stimulated.
Right.
True fulfillment, Gavrani argues, comes from within.
It does.
It's about cultivating a sense of inner peace and contentment that doesn't rely on external validation or distractions. I think that's what resonated most with me about this book.
Yeah, me too.
It's not just about learning to tolerate being alone. It's about actively embracing solitude as an opportunity for growth, self-discovery, and a deeper connection with ourselves.
It's about recognizing that being alone doesn't have to be a negative experience.
Right.
In fact, it can be an incredibly enriching and empowering experience.
It's like she's saying, hey, you're going to be alone at various points in your life, so why not make it work for you?
Exactly. She challenges us to stop seeing alone time as this void to be filled by others,
Right.
but rather as a fertile ground for personal growth.
She even points out how some of history's most brilliant minds, Georgia O'Keeffe, Nikola Tesla, Vincent van Gogh, all embraced solitude as part of their creative process.
It's true.
And what's fascinating is how she contrasts this with our modern obsession with constant distraction.
Yeah.
In a world overflowing with information and stimulation, the ability to focus becomes a superpower.
It really does.
It makes you wonder if all those articles and videos about productivity hacks are missing the point.
Oh, totally.
Maybe the real hack is learning to be comfortable with our own thoughts.
Right. Gavrani argues that constantly filling our minds with external info, social media, news, entertainment, can actually hinder our ability to think deeply and creatively.
It can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
She uses this great analogy of overeating.
Oh, yeah, I love that one.
If we're constantly stuffing ourselves with information, our minds, like our stomachs, need time to digest and process it all.
It's a great analogy.
And that's where solitude comes in. It's like giving our minds a break from the buffet, allowing us to reflect on what we've consumed and make sense of it all.
That makes a lot of sense.
But she takes it a step further, doesn't she? She
Yeah.
talks about the importance of intentionally creating space for boredom.
Yeah, it's a point she returns to again and again, and for good reason.
Now, that might sound counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but think about it. When was the last time you allowed yourself to truly be bored?
Hmm.
No phone, no TV,
Right.
just your own thoughts.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's kind of terrifying, isn't it?
It can be.
We're so used to instant gratification and constant stimulation that boredom feels like a threat.
For sure.
But as we've been discussing, maybe that's exactly why it's so important.
Exactly. It's about challenging ourselves to sit with that discomfort, to resist the urge, to immediately reach for a distraction.
Right.
And Gavrani argues that when we do, we might be surprised by what we discover.
I'm ready to be surprised. So what happens when we do allow ourselves to be bored? What does that look like?
Well, Gavrani, along with many other creative thinkers, argues that boredom can actually be a surprisingly fertile ground for creativity.
Oh, interesting.
She mentions how some of her most innovative ideas came to her during moments of quiet contemplation when she wasn't actively searching for them.
I can see that.
Yeah.
It's like when you're trying to force an idea, it just doesn't come.
Right.
But when you let your mind wander, that's when the magic happens.
Exactly.
It's like giving our minds the space they need to breathe, to make new connections, to wander off the beaten path.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
So how do we actually make this shift from dreading alone time to embracing it?
Right.
How do we cultivate that sense of comfort and even excitement about spending time with ourselves? Gavrani lays out a pretty practical plan, doesn't she?
She does, and it all starts with a shift in perspective.
Let's hear it. What's the first step in Gavrani's plan? So let's hear it. What's the first step in Gavrani's plan?
Well, the first step, and this is really crucial, is to identify those areas in your life where you feel most dissatisfied.
Okay.
Think about the things that you really dislike.
Hmm.
Those aspects that drain your energy or leave you feeling unfulfilled.
Okay, so it's about getting honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
Even if it's a little uncomfortable.
Exactly.
But then what?
Okay.
Do we try to overhaul our entire lives?
Not at all. That's where the next step comes in.
Okay.
Instead of trying to tackle everything at once, Gavrani suggests focusing on just one major issue,
Okay.
that one thing that's really bugging you.
Right.
Then, and this is key, you set a clear action goal related to that specific issue.
So it's about breaking down those big, overwhelming problems
Right.
into smaller, more manageable steps.
Exactly.
I like that. It feels less daunting,
Yeah.
more achievable.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Gavrani emphasizes the importance of aligning your actions with your natural tendencies.
Oh, okay.
It's about recognizing that we all have different rhythms and preferences,
Right.
and trying to force ourselves into a mold that doesn't fit will only lead to frustration.
Makes sense.
This resonates with me so much. She actually shares her own struggles with trying to become a morning person despite being a natural night owl.
Oh, wow.
It's like she was fighting against her own internal clock.
It happens.
It wasn't until she embraced her natural tendencies that she was able to find a rhythm that worked for her.
Yeah.
It's about working with your own unique nature, not against it.
Right. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Exactly. It just doesn't work.
It doesn't.
So it sounds like self-awareness is a key part of Gavrani's approach.
Absolutely.
It's about understanding ourselves,
Yeah.
our strengths, our weaknesses, our values, our preferences,
Mm.
and then using that knowledge to create a life that feels authentic and fulfilling.
Right.
It's about becoming our own best friend,
I love that.
offering ourselves the same understanding and support we would give to someone we love.
You've got it. It's like she's saying, hey, you have the power to design your own life even when you're alone. And she encourages us to take ownership of that power.
To stop waiting for someone else to rescue us from loneliness or grant us happiness. It's about becoming our own source of joy fulfillment and even excitement.
It's about recognizing that we already have everything we need within ourselves
Yeah.
to create a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling even in solitude.
Absolutely.
We don't need a romantic partner, a huge group of friends, or a jam-packed social calendar to be happy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
True happiness comes from within.
hmm
It's about cultivating a sense of inner peace and contentment that doesn't rely on external validation or distractions.
It's about finding that peace within ourselves.
Right. And that's where the art of being alone really comes into play.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the art of being alone,
Yeah?
I'm curious to hear what stands out to you. What insights or strategies from Gavrani's book sparked something within you? How can you apply her wisdom to your own life to transform those moments of solitude into opportunities for growth and fulfillment?
Hmm. That's a good question. Perhaps the most profound takeaway from our deep dive is this. Maybe, just maybe, the key to forming genuine connections with others lies in first cultivating a deep and loving connection with ourselves.
Something to ponder as you navigate the beautiful complexities of being alone.